Hey everybody, Alex here, Out of the Park 21 Pittsburgh Pirates franchise, episode 6, beginning our off-season recap. I'm going to do the off-season with you guys over the next couple of days in real life, in my life. So if you hear kind of some weird cuts and sounds like I've started something new or taken a pause, that's going to be the reason why, because I'm not going to do the whole entire game off-season in one day. But I do want to show you guys the start of our off-season. It is October 30th. 2020. I want to show you guys what happened in the playoffs around the MLB. Cleveland Indians are your World Series champs, defeating the San Diego Padres in 5. Take a quick look at the Indians team overall. They got former Pirate Starling Marte out in left field. Pretty good club. No one maybe super amazing. Jose Ramirez, a nice job at third, but just a really good team overall. We'll check out what they did in the game clinching, World Series clinching victory over the Padres, winning 5-1. Starling Marte hit a 2-run double. I don't know if there's MVP shown in here. Shane Bieber was player of the game to clinch the World Series for the Indians, going 7 2/3, allowing just one earned, and the bullpen shut the door. So that was the playoff results. We can go back to the playoff tree overall briefly. You see here for the NL Central concern, the Cardinals got handily taken care of by the Braves, and after winning in a pretty weak NL Central. So that is the playoffs. I showed you guys the stats from last time, but there's a wrap on 2020. For our team, we do have one team option to decide. That is with starting pitcher Chris Archer. Quick look at his season recap. The movements come down a little bit. We did some scouting here, and that's a bit of a concern. You can see he is declining. He's 32 years old, so maybe he's not the guy that he once was, and that is a worry. Still, though, I think he had a strong season, as indicated in our last video overall. We are going to pick up his option and exercise it. He certainly could be someone we look to trade at the deadline if we're not competitive next year. But although the $11 million is pretty hefty, considering our small budget, small market team, I think it's well worth it because the price of starting pitching is so expensive. We don't have the prospects internally to come up to replace him. So we are going to execute the option on Chris Archer. Salary arbitration, as I noted, we have so many guys who are salary arbitration eligible. You see this giant list. It's even, I think, longer than our minor league free agent list, which I'll get to offline. We won't have to go through that together. Our only pending free agent is Jared Dyson. We're going to let him go. Obviously, we're not going to submit a qualifying offer, and his decline has been fairly pronounced at the end of this year. You can see in the scouting. Defensively, as a fielder, center field drops from 55 to 40. The contact went down a little bit. The speed went down a little bit. He's clearly in decline at 36 years old. We have no interest in bringing him back. We'll replace him internally, I think, without much issue. I'm not going to make all of the arbitration decisions today. I want to just kind of go through the guys that we know we're not going to offer arbitration. That'll kind of help clear up our budget situation, because our budget for this year is only about $80 million, and you see right now we're projected at 78.7. It gives us very, very little wiggle room, but that is with all the arbitration estimates, and there are certainly some guys we are not going to offer to and probably just release outright. So the guys that we're not going to offer to, as I said before in our last video, Luke Maile, the catcher. Good defensively, terrible with the bat, just absolutely horrendous. At a $158, 2 home runs over an entire season, 12 RBIs. I know he didn't play a lot, but that's hard to do. So it's only $1 million arbitration estimate, but we're not even going to pay $1 million. We have Trace Barrera, who I'll show you here in a second. So we will withdraw the offer from Melee. Barrera is going to probably be our backup catcher next year, progressing in some decent fashion here. 26 years old, will make his major league debut, assuming all goes well next season. High work ethic as well. Did really well in AAA. Came on strong at 320, 385, 477 slash line, 1.3 WAR. So I'm pretty confident that he can, again, good defensively, and clearly a much better prospect with the bat than a guy like Luke Maile. Other guys we're not going to offer arbitration. I don't even know how Jake Elmore is listed as arbitration eligible. He's not listed in the salary situation, but we're not going to offer him either. Maybe we bring him back on a minor league type deal because he is versatile and can play in a little bit of defense, and I like he doesn't strike out a whole lot. That's kind of attractive, but not enough for the majors. Other guys we want to make decisions on, I might have to debate some of these other guys here offline, at least not shown here with the game. Obviously, some of these guys we're going to certainly give arbitration to, but a guy like Herrera in center field, good defensively, strong versus lefties. We showed you his splits last time. He did pretty well against lefties, 281, but just useless versus righties at a $192. I think we're going to withdraw the offer for him. If I change it later, I'll let you know. But currently, we're going to withdraw the offer. He's 29 years old. I think we can find someone that's good defensively and maybe a platoon guy without having to pay really any sort of money for that. And again, with how just cap strapped we are in terms of our budget, it just doesn't make enough sense. Eric Gonzalez is another guy where it just doesn't feel like it's going to be worth it. 208, again, good defensively, but defense is so cheap in this game, and I can find someone internally to handle that. So I think I'm going to withdraw the offer on him as well. Let's see, arbitration hearing is on the 18th. So I have some time to maybe make a decision on that. But those are the guys for sure that I'm not going to offer to. Also, Robbie Erlin, certainly not going to offer him. 30 years old, made 2 starts for us this year. Was just, did nothing, which was fine. But I really didn't expect him to do well for us. But 2 starts here, ERA of close to 9, call it 8.5. So certainly going to withdraw the offer on him. I may end up releasing some of these guys to be able to get a better understanding of my budget situation. But for now, I'm going to withdraw the offer on those handful of players. I think that's where I'm going to stop for now. If I make any more decisions, I'll let you know. Alright guys, we're back here on November 11th. Just had all the awards get announced, so I'll run through that along with the moves we've made so far. In terms of the moves we've made so far, we have signed Zach Birdie to extension avoiding arbitration, just a 1-year deal. Same with Jacob Stallings for $4.5 million. Also have a couple other signings coming in here. Amir Garrett signed, still working on the rest of the list here. Let's look at the awards. And that began a couple days ago. Where is the list at? With the AL, you can see the best defenders, the Great Glove Awards. I'll scroll through. Feel free to pause the video, though you can kind of see all the names there. In the NL, for the Pirates, Trevor Williams got the Great Glove Award for the pitchers. So congrats to him on a really solid season. For the AL, Nick Anderson for the Rays gets the Reliever of the Year award. And for the NL, it was Kirby Yates of the Padres, the NL champs, before losing to the Indians in the World Series. You see Neverauskas and Nick Birdie getting some votes for the good guys for us. Let me scroll up here to the Silver Slugger Awards for the AL. Again, feel free to pause it at any point if you like. Giancarlo Stanton, Mike Trout, Kyle Tucker in the outfield, Chris Davis, the DH for the AL. In the NL, you have Jacob deGrom at 292 with 3 home runs this year. Rizzo, Albies, Arenado, Tatis Jr., Bellinger in center, and Mookie Betts in right. Rookie of the Year goes to Austin Hayes. We'll look at his numbers briefly here. 274, 317, 155 starts in center field for the Orioles. Rest of the list here also had another Oriole, Diaz, in second place. So there is your AL Rookie of the Year. In the NL, no surprise, Gavin Lux of the Dodgers just had an unbelievable season. This guy looks like one of the best players in baseball in time, and really right now. 313, 386, 24 home runs. Just unbelievable numbers across the board. How did they get this guy? First 20th overall pick in 2016. Well, good for them. You see the rest of the rookies here. Mitch Keller, that was my vote. I voted for it, and I stole the unanimous award for Gavin Lux. In the AL, for top manager, it goes to Terry Francona of the World Series champs, Cleveland Indians. No surprise there. And Jace Tingler for the Padres, the NL champs, gets it for the Padres. For the Cy Young, in the AL, it goes to Shane Bieber, who, as we showed you earlier, pitched the 7 innings to win the World Series in, 5 games for Cleveland. You can see the rest of the results here. Tyler Glasnow, former Bucco, in second place, followed by Lance McCullers and Ohtani. In the NL, it goes to Walker Buehler of the Dodgers. 20-3, 2.12 ERA, 227 strikeouts, 208, I should say, average. Against Jacob deGrom, narrowly loses out in second place, so Buehler dominated the first place votes. And I believe the last awards are the MVP. For the AL, it goes to Mike Trout. Check out his numbers: 298, 446 on base percentage, 9.6 WAR. What a year for Mike Trout. 44 home runs, 118 RBIs, and nearly walked as many times as he struck out. Looking at the rest of the AL standings for the MVP award, Torres in second place, Ramirez, but really nobody was close to the season that Mike Trout had for the Angels. In the NL, it goes to Fernando Tatis Jr. of the Padres, the NL MVP. Check out the season he had. Really, really strong. 326, 393, 585. Slash line 7.6 WAR, 35 home runs, 11 triples. I believe that was one of the top numbers in baseball when it comes to triples. The rest of the NL award standings, Corey Seager, narrowly, pretty close here between Tatis and Seager, followed by the other Dodger, Cody Bellinger. And no Pirates, I don't think, made the list, and really none of them deserved to. So those moves we've made. I'll come back after arbitration, unless I've done anything else since then, and I'll let you know the results of all of our arbitration hearings. I did decide to make one more move, actually, and unfortunately I either just didn't record or lost the file or something, and so I'm actually doing this on February 18th. I'll try to avoid any spoilers for later in the video, but I did manage to dump Gregory Polanco's contract on the New York Mets, though it took a lot of doing. I had to give up several prospects for them. Mid-level guys that were kind of major league ready, some guys that maybe were a year away just for them to take on the contract without me retaining any sort of salary, so I traded Polanco. I also dealt Robbie Glendening, who's on their major league roster right now, who was with us and did okay with AA Altoona, hit 287, 384, 2.4 WAR. So, you know, an okay guy across the board, definitely hitting well, and someone they had interest in to help out some of their infield help. The Mets, by the way, had a ton of cap space. They had like $81 million in budget. I don't know where they're at right now. I don't want to click on it and give away any sort of spoilers, potentially for later in the video, so it made a lot of sense. They were losing Cespedes, and he was fragile anyway. Also threw in Jose Osuna, probably the most major league ready piece of the deal. Just never thought he'd be competent enough defensively anyway. We have Josh Bell at first base, and just really never sinned well for me. Last year in brief time with the Pirates, hit a $167, some power, but I think has maybe a need for them if to fill a third base, potentially even in the outfield as well. And then also gave up Dylan Busby, someone that we really hadn't paid much attention to in our organization. We probably should have, because this guy had just a phenomenal year in AA Altoona last year. The dude hit 30 home runs, 111 RBIs, a WAR of 5.1, so potential corner guy. But for me, defensively, was he going to be good enough? And then you know me and my Moneyball strategy, is he going to strike out so much that it's going to frustrate me? I don't think his average was going to support it. So a good prospect, somebody that I think might be punching above his weight a little bit, but someone I think the Mets would be interested in. Again, they had the budget to take on the deal. Potentially they're starting right field. They could shift from forward to left potentially as well. So Gregory Polanco off the books finally, and now a New York Met. Okay, we are back on November 19th, the day after arbitration hearings have been held and decided and announced. I want to go back a couple of days to talk about some of the guys I've signed prior to arbitration. Some minor league guys here. Phillip Evans, a second baseman. Just a versatile infielder. Alan Cordoba, who we traded for last year. Could have an outside chance to make the roster, the big league roster in 2021. John Ryan Murphy to be a backup catcher. Not a whole lot going there with him, but some organizational depth. And ditto with Charlie Tilson. Do have a void at center field. I don't think Tilson's going to be in the mix, but I guess I can't discount it entirely, especially if there are injuries. To the Major League roster, Kyle Crick, we avoided arbitration with a, what's the deal on this here? $900,000. His arbitration, or his extension to avoid arbitration, I should say. Bring him back in the bullpen. Same with Colin Moran, avoided arbitration with a 1-year, $4.7 million offer after having a very strong 2020 season. A couple other guys we have signed here before we get to the arbitration, guys we cannot come to terms with. Trevor Williams, actually going to be a 2-year extension, $7.4 million in total, 3.4 this upcoming season, $4 million. That'll take him through the rest of his arbitration eligible year, so I wanted to lock him down. Just, assuming he'll have some average to slightly above average production as a number 4, number 5 pitcher. Chad Kuhl, a 1-year extension, again avoiding arbitration, worth just $950K. He did regress. He's kind of fallen off a little bit. Again, kind of borderline number 4, number 5, potential long relief guy that can come in when injuries do strike. To arbitration, had 3 guys that went arbitration. Josh Bell, the arbitrator, sided with us, so he's going to make $6 million. He wanted just under 7. Same with Jameson Taillon, who wanted $7.5 million. He wanted a long-term deal. I certainly was not going to offer that with him still recovering from Tommy John. He's still got 3 months to go on that, so he'll play for $5.5 million in 2020. The one we lost, though, was a doozy. Adam Frazier, he wanted a really long-term extension, an 8-year deal. Certainly was not going to happen. Tried to offer him at 7.75. I mean, he was making like $2 million this past season, so that is a massive pay increase, but arbitrator did not see it our way after batting over 300 this season, so he'll make over $10.5 million. So it's a good thing we traded Gregory Polanco, because had we not done that, we simply just would not have had the budget space to really be able to afford that. So I'll do a quick look at our salaries. In our budget overall for 2021, we are projected to hit at $67.7 million. A couple guys we did not offer arbitration to. I don't know if it'll show it on here, but guys like Eric Gonzalez and Richard Rodriguez and Jake Elmore and maybe one or two other players. Chris Stratton was another, I believe. I should have had the list here, but all guys we did not offer arbitration to. There's a chance I will bring back somebody like Eric Gonzalez for cheap in free agency. That'll be our next step with free agency filings happening starting tomorrow. So we'll regroup here when free agency begins and who I might target. Okay, we are back on January 18th, a day before the preseason for 2021 begins. I want to give you a run through of what I did in free agency. Nothing too exciting. Small market team, didn't really have plans to go after a high prize guy, but we did sign two players to minor league deals with an option to become a major league contract. We signed Billy Hamilton, the center fielder. I feel like everybody in every single one of these games signs Billy Hamilton at some point. It feels like a rite of passage, but really not a lot of center field help available in free agency, at least guys that were strong defensively. Hamilton, by far the best, plus 8.6 ZR last season. Of course, there's going to be issues with getting on base, and he had 230 last year, and certainly no power, one home run, and basically 700 at bats last season. Just crazy low numbers, but he's going to give you great speed, really strong defensively. If I've had a better center field option, Hamilton is on this minor league deal. He can opt out after 30 days if not promoted, so we have some flexibility there. So kind of a really low risk measure, $1.4 million, really cheap for a 1-year deal, even if he does play for us. So I just thought that was a good bridge to give us some options and somebody that at least is going to give us really good defense and good speed on the bases. Similar to Hamilton, and I was surprised by this, we got Michael Wacha for really cheap, a very similar contract to Hamilton. He signed a 1-year, $1.5 million minor league contract with a major league option. Same thing. After 30 days, if not promoted, he can opt out. Basically for injury protection, if a guy like Jameson Taillon isn't recovering well, if someone like Chad Kuhl isn't pitching the way he wants to, if there's another injury in spring training that of course can happen. Wacha, an established guy, about to turn 30. Nothing crazy with the numbers, but actually had a pretty impressive year with the Mets last season. 3.76 ERA plus of 112 and 115 strikeouts in 105 innings. 9 starts, so he did bullpen and starting work. So he can still, again, be flexible for us. Maybe he becomes part of the rotation, maybe not. Either way, I like the flexibility there. So those were, I think, our major two free agency signings, which again is very quiet. Hamilton and Wacha, though we did do a couple other things, and I'll tell you guys about those moves right now. We did sign Ke'Bryan Hayes, our rising star of a third baseman, to a 7-year contract extension, $37.6 million total. You can see the breakdown of the deal here. Was it a risk? A little bit, and we're paying a little bit more than obviously what he was going to be owed this season. Actually, though, I think for this year he's still making the league minimum, but for the next couple of years he was still going to make a league minimum before the arbitration kicked in. But I think for a franchise like us, the only way we win with retaining talent long term is by paying that price a little bit earlier than what other teams might be able to afford and wait on and pay that price a little bit later. So I wanted to get Hayes done as soon as possible. It's a really reasonable contract, and if he becomes the player that I think he's capable of becoming, then that's going to be really cheap a couple of years down the road. So last year, his first year in the majors, a decent year, maybe a little underwhelming here, 261, 317 on base percentage, 95 OPS plus .8 WAR, but I think long term this guy's going to become a cornerstone at third base and also now capable of playing right field. So I was really excited to get Ke'Bryan Hayes to a long-term deal, and I think that's the only way a team like the Pirates can win in the long run. When it came to the Rule 5 draft, we did lose one player, starting pitcher James Marvel. Now with Boston, looks like they want to make him a reliever. Not too mad about that. I added a bunch of guys to the 40-man. He was a guy I decided against. Didn't think anyone was going to take him. He was fairly average across the board in AAA with the Indians last year in our organization, so he may circle back at some point, but we did lose James Marvel. We did draft one player in the Rule 5 draft. That is Jonah Heim, a catcher. Really wasn't expecting it, but high leader, high adaptability, high work ethic, good defensively, good eye, gets on base, the old Billy Bean. He gets on base, and he did that in Double-A last year. 250, 325 though on base percentage, 49 walks, 64 strikeouts. For me, The numbers it comes down to and the things I look at here is I want a walk rate of around 10% or better. He was at 9.2 and actually 10.4 last year in AA, I should say, and a strikeout rate under 20%, and he's well under that at 13.6 last year, and it's been under that for almost his entire career, or at least the last several years. So I'm not sure how it's going to work with a guy like Trace Barrera, who's still in the mix, but Haim Rufai, maybe he makes it, maybe Barrera still spends time in the minors, I don't know. There's an injury component too, someone gets hurt, underperforms, you have some options there. So I'm really excited to get Jonah Heim, and we'll see what he looks like in spring training. We made a couple minor moves, I should say, but this one was notable in terms of organizational depth. But this is a guy, Tyler Nevin, that I think maybe could become something in the majors. A first baseman, plays the position well, and like I said with Heim, this is a guy that gets on base. His eye, his avoid Ks are strong. Last year, he actually walked more than he struck out, like we did in AA 2 years ago. A really impressive rate. So the numbers we looked at last year, almost a 20% walk rate. Again, struck out less than he walked. Super impressive. So never going to hit for power. And that's a little different than a prototypical first baseman, but I think this is a guy that fits our system well. What we gave up a starting pitcher, Ryan Harbin, 19 years old, a flyer, but I don't know if he'll ever become anything, and Brett Kinnaman, a right fielder as well. So low risk move there. One last trade we made actually just a couple days ago on the 12th, and again, this is more organizational depth, but that's the kind of stuff I nerd over. It's actually a former Pirate that's returning to Pittsburgh, at least on the minor league level for now. He might start the year in AAA, maybe part of our spring training roster, but JB Shuck, and again, just this is total money ball, high work ethic, high intelligence, decent outfielder, at least on the corners, and can play center field in a pinch. But I mean, had a strong year expectedly in AAA last year. We had 301, 379 on base percentage. Again, walked nearly as often as he struck out. Minor league deal. Very cheap here, and I think just good depth. If there's injuries, guys that underperform, and you're somebody, if I call him up, if I need him for some reason, he's at least going to get on base, even if he's not going to provide a whole lot more than that. And I do like the high work ethic and high intelligence as well. What we traded for Shuck was a center fielder, I should say, Josh Bissonnette. So just a younger center fielder that, again, decent eye and avoid K. Doesn't look like he's going to be a whole lot for me, but they were interested in him. That was part of the make it work button. He actually had an okay season in low A ball West Virginia last year, 264 in 60 plate appearances. And also gave up a reliever, Jarlin Yes, 20 years old. I think OSA likes him a little bit more than our scout does. Throws decent. Actually, they have a pretty big difference in terms of the velocity on this. I don't know if I've seen this before. They say 93, 95 in OSA. Our scout says 90 to 92. Just get a radar gun to the guy, and you think you'd be able to find that out. But anyway, so in rookie ball last year, pretty middling. The control was certainly an issue. So just two younger prospects that probably won't hit, but for a guy like JB Shuck, who really has no value in terms of anything beyond this year at 33, obviously towards the twilight of his career. But I think a good move for us in the short term if we do need an outfielder that can get on base. And then a quick look around the offseason, what the rest of the league has been doing, because clearly our free agency has not been incredibly exciting. See, the Angels here are number one in terms of WAR gained. Let's see who they added. Anyone super notable? They got Simmons back. They signed JT Realmuto to a big deal. That was a 4-year, $96.5 million contract. And they also signed, I hate whenever you back out and resets you, but also signed J.D. Martinez, I assume to be their DH, because he certainly cannot play on defense, but that was to another pretty big contract, 5 years, $114 million, running through 2025. So Angels, I guess, in that sense, were the big winners. Milwaukee, in terms of NL Central, they seem to add a lot of talent. Let's see who they got. Their big signing was Asdrubal Cabrera to a 3-year, $31.5 million deal. So a pretty reasonable deal. The dude is 35, granted, but still that's not a ton of money. And he had a great season with the Nats last year, hitting 303, 376, a WAR of 5.1. So Milwaukee, they were dead last in the Central last year. They're trying to make a push for sure. Let's just kind of scroll through some other notable signings here. Tanaka is going to Seattle. What else do we have here? There were certainly some ones earlier on in free agency I can scroll around to. Colin McHugh gets a really nice contract for the Atlanta Braves. Was in Boston last season and had a pretty successful year overall. I had him in my 19 save, and he had a couple good years for us back then. What else happened notable across the league? Again, you can pause anytime here and see what else, anything that I may have passed over. Howie Kendrick going to Miami, so he'll try to rebuild the Marlins. Though at age 37, not a lot of time to do that. Another guy who played for the Nationals last year. So Washington seems to have lost a lot after a playoff run last year. Again, I hate how it puts you back to the top, and I got to scroll back down again. So I'll just kind of wait for some big names here. Here's Mookie Betts. This was the prized possession. He's now an Arizona Diamondback. He signed a 5-year, $111 million contract. So pretty reasonable, actually. That's not that expensive. He's got an opt-out, though, after the 2022 season, so 2 years from now. So a really reasonable deal for Arizona. And, of course, they're getting one of the best players in baseball who just raked with the Dodgers in 2020, and really you can't be mad about any of those numbers. He's just simply one of the best players in baseball. So Mookie Betts, I should say, had the prized possession of free agency. He'll head to Arizona. We lost Michael Feliz to Atlanta. Betances, he's back in New York. He's been switching between the New York teams, the Mets and the Yankees. Garrett Richards also becomes a Yankee. Let's see what happened early on in free agency. Any other notable names? Cole Hamels with Philadelphia. What else? Simmons going back to the Angels. Osuna, Atlanta. Justin Turner. And let's go with James Paxton because that's impactful for the NL Central. So St. Louis, their big possession this year was signing James Paxton, 32 years old, be the starting pitcher. That is a 5-year, $81 million deal. I cannot believe the deal the Betts got and how cheap that was. That is a steal for the Diamondbacks. But yeah, a Yankee last year. He'll probably even more success in the NL this year. So that's basically the bulk of free agency. Overall, I'm happy with what we did. We didn't do a whole lot, but I'm just happy with the guys we have internally and how they're going to grow. And so the last thing I'll do is show you guys the spring training roster, and then we'll close out the video. And the next video after that will be us checking out opening day and the start of our 2021 season. Alright guys, last thing I wanted to show you before we end the video, we'll go through our spring training lineups and roster and in preseason predictions around the MLB to round things out. Our spring training roster, we have 39 guys on it, which I think is good enough. I think if you add any more, then guys just simply don't get playing time. I may add 1 or 2 more names here in the process, and of course injury can change things as well. I won't show you the whole starting lineups and guys that are certainly going to make the team. We'll just look at some other guys that are on that fringe and guys that were just called out to be here in spring training. At catcher, Trace Barrera is going to battle Jonah Heim, our Rule 5 draft pick for the backup catcher job. I have no idea who's going to win that. They're pretty evenly matched. We'll see what happens. At first base, who I showed you earlier, Tyler Nevin, who we traded for this offseason. Probably not going to make the roster, but he'll be there to compete and be a backup first baseman. Jason Martin's going to start in center because I want to get his center field position rating up. It's only 40 right now. That's not going to be good enough. Potential that he could get the center field job this year. He'll be battling Billy Hamilton, who, of course, is really good defensively in center field. I do want to teach him how to play a corner position. I'm surprised he doesn't have any ratings to play a corner position. Probably more left than right because his arm just isn't very good, but he can hang out in left. And so let me know who you guys think will be the, should be and would be the starting center fielder, Jason Martin or Billy Hamilton. We'll also have O'Neal Cruz in right field, teaching him how to play right, because he really just can't play short. He probably will not make the team, and I'm still shaky on his future, although he is a top prospect, 58th, you can see there, but his avoid case is so low that does really concern me, but he'll get his first taste in the majors, as will Travis Swaggerty, our first-round pick in 2018. Out of South Alabama. He'll compete in center field. Surprised that position rating number is as low as it is at 50, but his eye and discipline and avoid case is decent and certainly can get better. And he had a really good year in Double-A Altoona last year, hitting 294, 365 on base percentage, a WAR of 5. So I think it's time to certainly see what he can do. And if he does really well, hey, maybe there's a chance he makes the opening day roster. Kevin Kramer struggled last year, was on our roster to begin 2020, hit a $191, sent around to Triple-A, and of course he performed better. He's got an inside track to be a backup infielder this year after the loss in free agency of Eric Gonzalez. May play him in a different spot, so he gets a little better at third or in the outfield. We'll see, but he's kind of a Swiss Army knife, and hopefully he's better with a bat than he was a year ago. Another infielder, Stefan Elmis, I believe how you say his name, very similar to Eric Gonzalez last year. Not going to do much with the bat, though. Will get on base at a decent clip, but good speed, really good defensively. Going to teach him probably how to play third base or some new position in all likelihood. And he's high loyalty, high work ethic, and high intelligence. Really impressive across the board. He was in Double-A for us last year and did well enough. I assume that WAR is mainly driven by his fielding stats. Let's check that out briefly. Yeah, he was amazing at second base, plus 9.3 ZR, at second, plus 4.4 at short. So a really good glove. I could see him being a backup infielder. We'll see how the spring goes. That's basically everyone I wanted to show you. A couple more guys I believe are here. Alan Cordoba, very similar type of guy. Not going to offer a whole lot with a bat. A decent guy to get on base. Good speed, good defensively. Not quite as good as Elmas, but certainly in that same vein, I would say. So Alan Cordoba, who we got in a trade for JT Riddle last year, will be up here competing with it for an infield spot. A couple more guys, I think. One more, actually. Talmito Augustin, who we traded for a Nikela deal at the deadline last year. Probably not going to make the team. I'd be very surprised if he did, but he's up here probably just for that first wave. I will make cuts throughout spring training, and so we'll just see what he can do. In Double-A last year, he had 252, so pretty average, but just some outfield depth for us. Let's go check on the pitching staff and see what they look like. All right, the starters we won't talk about too much. We basically have 4 guys locked in, at least 3 with Musgrove, Archer, and Keller. Trevor Williams will probably be my number 4. And Jameson Taillon, healthy after Tommy John surgery, back in rotation. Unfortunately, he is fragile, and that's not going to change for the future, so always a big injury risk for his future, and the stuff and the movement ratings aren't that good. He did maintain his control, but he's an unknown right now. We'll see how he does in spring training. Got his pitch count real low at 50. We'll take it easy with him and just kind of see how things develop. Hopefully, he has a good spring training after recovering again from that Tommy John. Some other starting pitching options. We have Michael Wacha, who I showed you guys earlier. We signed to a minor league deal that can become a major league deal after 30 days into the season, so he'll get some spot work as well and kind of see where he's at. I like that as a really valuable depth signing. Also have Chad Kuhl, who was our number 5 last year. Very average across the board. 30 starts, 4.5 ERA plus of just 92, but again, depth and potential long relief options, so have some flexibility with Chad Kuhl. Brandon Waddell, who was miserable starting for us last year. 4 games started, 6 games total, an ERA closing in on 9, but he does have good stuff, 3+ pitches, just has never really materialized, but he's back up for another cup of coffee with the Buccos. Cody Ponce, one of our better prospects in terms of starting pitching. We don't have a whole lot of those, but Ponce is one of them. Was absolutely phenomenal in AAA last year, both as a starter and a reliever. ERA around 2, so a potential starting material. Injury strike midseason. Ponce could certainly hear his name called up. And Stephen Brault, potential reliever, long relief, emergency spot starter as well. In terms of the bullpen, a lot of names we've seen before. We won't go over them. Nick Birdie, of course, will be our closer. Nick Roskus was fantastic last season. He should be in the setup role. Other names you guys know: Edgar Santana, Amir Garrett, Blake Wayman, Brubaker, Cricky. No one really unknown there. The one issue I have with the bullpen, and let me switch over to all relievers, is the control. Our bullpen is not great in terms of control. I know that typically relievers focus more on stuff than something like control, and starters want to have better control because they're pitching a lot more. But still, you got guys like Cal Crick and Cedarland and Brault, and Garrett's declining a bit, and even Birdie under 50, and that is really concerning. I think my biggest concern right now with this team is the bullpen. Are they going to walk too many guys? And that could be an issue, and something that absolutely does concern me. So I did sign this one guy to a minor league deal. I don't think he's going to make the team, but he's got, this is Joe Mantiply, he's got really good control at 70. I mean, he's kind of the opposite of these other, power arms that we have. His stuff is low, he throws 90, he's sidearm, he's a finesse pitcher, but he's got really good control, and so I wanted to have just a different kind of guy in the pen and just kind of compare and contrast that. He was an A-ball last year for some reason and did well, as you would expect, but don't think he's going to make the team. But if some relievers struggle and get hurt in their control and they're wild, maybe Mantiply can solve that issue at least. In terms of other relievers that are kind of unfamiliar faces, David Bednar, who we got in the Riddle deal at the deadline last year. Again, control issues with him, and that definitely materialized in AAA with the Indianapolis Indians. He nearly walked as many as he struck out. I mean, a whip of 2.6 is just unheard of, basically. Granted, in a limited sample size, 18 2/3 innings. But he's got 3+ pitches, the fastball, the curveball, the splitter. Good stuff overall, so we'll see what he can do in spring training. Blake Cedarland is one of our better reliever prospects. Again, very similar to Bednar. Good stuff, good movement to control. Unfortunately, it's below average, but he had a decent year. I think he struggled to start 2020 in Altoona, but he finished it well. ERA under 4, ERA plus of 107. So again, we'll kind of see what he can do and try to give all these guys as much time and opportunity as possible. So that is basically the whole pitching staff. Last thing I want to do is jump to preseason predictions and take a look around what's happening in Major League Baseball. All right, checking out the MLB predictions in the AL East. The Tampa Bay Rays are actually expected to win the division over the Yankees and the Red Sox at 92 and 70. The Chicago White Sox in the Central, there's a surprising team over the Cleveland Indians, who won the World Series over the Padres last year. 91 wins projected, and they got a guy from Japan. I think that's the reason why they're projected to do so well. Yamada, who did great last year, signed to a massive contract, 8 years, $134 million. So we'll see if the White Sox can finally turn around. The past couple of seasons have just been terrible for them. In the AL West, the Houston Astros expected to take this one over the Angels and the A's with 96 wins. You can see here for the top hitters, Alex Bregman and Francisco Lindor. For the pitchers, Sale, Garrett Cole, some familiar faces on this list. Austin Meadows, a one-time Pirate, short-time Pirate, unfortunately, projected to do well as well. For the National League, in the NL East, the New York Mets expected to take this one at 91 and 71. In the Central, the Cardinals, I believe, won 90 or 91 games last year, expected to have a repeat performance. They're projected to win the NL Central with a 90 and 72 record. The Pirates, for some reason, projected to only win 76 games. We were projected to win 79 last year, ended up winning 85. I think we have a better team this year than last year. We lost barely anything in the offseason and really shed some dead weight with guys like Gregory Polanco. So I think we're going to outperform these numbers again. But the prediction gods not being kind to us here to start. And in the NL West, the Dodgers, who finished in second place, I think, to the Padres last year. Both teams, I believe, won 100 games, but Dodgers projected to win this comfortably, going 96 and 66. In terms of the worst records in baseball, looks like the Giants in the NL at 64 wins projected. In the AL, looks like the Rangers and the Tigers are going to have a tough time in 2021. And for the top hitters in the NL, Christian Yelich, Juan Soto for the NL side. I think Soto just looks like just an unbelievable prospect and had a great year last season with Cody Bellinger and Arenado and Acuna Jr. and Mookie Betts, who's now in Arizona Diamondback, who we showed earlier. Top pitchers, Aaron Nola, Syndergaard, Walker Buehler, Steven Strasburg, and I think the only NL Central name anywhere on this list is Castillo for the Reds, who had a pretty tough time of it last year with an ERA about 5.5 in 33 starts, but projected to have a much better season in 2021. So that is basically the video. We were in spring training. I will resume on opening day to show you guys the opening day rosters and obviously play opening day itself. We'll begin spring training today against the Phillies, and then the regular season starts on March 25th with a 3-game series at home, PNC Park, against the St. Louis Cardinals, then a 3-game series at home against the Brewers. So NL Central heavy to start. We'll have our first road trip to Philadelphia to begin April, and then a 2-game road stand with Milwaukee before returning home with a 4-game set against the Atlanta Braves. But we'll be back on this video on March 25th to show you guys the rosters and opening day. Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching, and we'll talk to you soon.